Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much. It is great to be back in the House of the Common People. And this will be my first speech in this Parliament, so let me begin with thank yous. Thank you to my brilliant and beautiful wife, Anaïda, a fierce fighter, a problem solver. She's our very own MacGyver. She can solve any problem. A entrepreneur, the love of my life, the greatest advisor I've ever had, someone who inspires me to keep on going through all hardship, and most of all, a courageous and strong mother who is always there for our kids, for Cruz and Valentina, fighting every day and in every way to make sure that our little Valentina has all of the opportunities that every other child enjoys. Merci. And I want to thank the great people of Battle River-Crowfoot. Some people said it must have been a burden to go straight into a by-election campaign right after a national election. I say it was a blessing to spend time with such amazing, extraordinary people. These are the people who feed, power, and protect our country. And they welcomed me with open arms, even though they knew I was a city boy from Calgary, and that Calgary is a long way from Consort, Coronation, or even Camrose. They brought this city boy in and gave him some good rural education. They schooled me in much wisdom, whether it was at the bronc matches or the rodeos, the farmers markets, or the other gatherings. They taught me and reinstilled in me the great values of hard work, of family, of community, of self-reliance, of strength, and of patriotism. And to them, I will always be grateful. Most of all, I will be grateful to the great Damien Currick, a wonderful patriot who put his country before himself. A father, and of course, most of all, a farm boy. And he brought me onto the farm and taught me a few lessons. He even brought me into his new cedar at the beginning of the season. And I got inside and started asking question after question. And eventually I could see he was getting impatient with me. And he said, you know that this machine depreciates at a rate of $400 an hour, so that in the time you've been asking these questions, it has cost me $100. I'm not a farmer, but Damien tells me that if I were, I would be outstanding in my field. Oh, come on, at least one dash. Tough crowd around here. But this is really the people who feed, power, and protect our country. They feed our nation through the farmers and the ranchers. These are not just any farmers. Many of them are century farmers, meaning their families have been there for over 100 years. They survived through boom and bust, through depression and drought, on some of the toughest farmland in the entire world. In fact, when many of the early pioneers arrived in the special areas of eastern Alberta, they were told, don't bother. There's not enough rain or soil to farm here. They said, we'll do it anyway. And 5, 6 generations later, those same family names are engraved on signs that you will see up and down the highways and byways of this incredible community. And through all the hardship, it has been their dedication to their families, to passing on to the next generation what they inherited from the previous, that these incredible families continue to make the dry, thin soils of the region blossom and bloom and take food from farm to feeding our families across the country. The great ranchers who harvest, who put out their herds onto these great grasslands of eastern Alberta, they are second to none in the world, and I pledge to forever be their most loyal customer. And Mr. Speaker, it is not just that. This is the people who power our country. We have the oil workers of all different trades. I'll give you just one example. The people of Hardisty, Alberta, 600 people in a town where there is a tank farm that moves over $90 billion of petroleum products. $90 billion is more than the GDP of about 50 of the world's countries, you can imagine. And it's 600 people that move this oil through roughly a half dozen pipelines, an amount that grows every single day. And then finally, we have those who protect our country, the soldiers at CFB Wainwright who are willing to lay their lives down for their country, and the prison guards in Drumheller who keep the most dangerous people away from our children and our communities, taking risks every day with their lives that none of us would be prepared to take. It is because of these soldiers and these prison guards that we can live in a safe country, and it is a privilege to represent them. And it is for them and for all Canadians that we are here fighting today. Our purpose is to restore the Canadian promise, to make this a country where hard work is rewarded, where food and homes are affordable, where streets are safe, where borders are solid, and where we're all united under a single Canadian flag, Canadians first, regardless of our origins. The people of Battle River-Crowfoot are a microcosm of the suffering that has unfolded over the last 10 years of Liberal government. Let's start with their paychecks and the take-home pay. In Battle River-Crowfoot, the energy workers are under attack. They've seen Canada's biggest industry under a direct assault by a federal government that sought to, quote, keep it in the ground, an objective imposed by the previous Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, on the advice of the current Prime Minister, who wrote that 50% of Canada's oil would have to stay in the ground. The current Prime Minister, who testified against building a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta, to the Pacific to allow us to go around the Americans and reach 2.5 billion customers overseas. Now, he promised that he would be different after his protege, whom he advised, drove hundreds of billions of dollars out of our country. But in fact, this Prime Minister has been worse. On matters of energy, while there have been many photo ops and meetings, papers have been shuffled, new offices have been created, and all of that has created a show that has amounted to nothing. In reality, he is blocking 38 projects that are currently sitting before federal regulators. He has kept in place the industrial carbon tax, the energy cap, the new carbon tax under a different name, the fuel standard, and he has created a new bureaucracy that will further slow down progress on these projects. In the 6 months this Prime Minister has been in power, a net $50 billion of investment has fled our country due to his high taxes and his increased regulation and red tape. In fact, just this week, 96 energy CEOs wrote saying that nothing he has done will reverse the damage the Liberals have exacted on our energy industry. The only way forward, Mr. Speaker, is to remove these terrible laws. The irony of his approach is this. He admits that his laws block energy production. So instead of getting rid of those laws, he passes another law to go around the bad law. He admits his bureaucracies block energy production. So instead of getting rid of those bureaucracies, he creates a new bureaucracy to get around the old bureaucracies. It seems that he confuses the problem with the solution. Why not just accept that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line? If you've got an obstacle, get rid of the obstacle. Put simply, get out of the way! So that is one example of how he blocks people from earning paychecks. And if they should be lucky enough to earn any paycheck at all, then he takes a big bite out of it. Liberal taxes now represent a higher cost than food, clothing, and shelter combined for Canadians, meaning that government is the single biggest cost in their lives, a cost that has risen dramatically in 10 years of Liberal government. And then what's left of their take-home pay gets eaten up by Liberal inflation. This is when governments create cash faster than the economy creates the goods that cash buys. The Prime Minister is a notorious inflationist. He has a terrible record on the subject. Of course, when he was the governor of the Bank of England, he had the second highest inflation rate in all of the G7, and only worse than the Liberal government provided here in Canada. He caused the housing crisis there by printing cash. And of course, the British media said that he was the unreliable boyfriend of central banking constantly changing his mind and engaging in decisions that drove up costs and drove down growth. And what do you know? Here he is repeating the same mistakes in Canada that he made over there, the same mistakes he advised Justin Trudeau to make. He does it all. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We as Conservatives want to slash the bureaucracy, the consultants, the foreign aid, the corporate welfare, the handouts to phony refugees, to bring down the cost so that no longer government will print money, and in fact, we can preserve the purchasing power of our dollar. And our purpose is stronger take-home pay, which means we have to unlock paychecks by repealing liberal anti-development laws, making this the fastest place on earth to get a building permit, unlocking the free enterprise system with an open for business policy. And so we ask the government to accept our positive solutions, adopt the Canadian Sovereignty Act that will make our economy strong, self-reliant, and stand on its own 2 feet. Let us cut income taxes so that hard work once again pays off and people bring home more of each dollar they earn. And let's preserve purchasing power by ending the money printing and allowing our dollar to go further. These are among the positive solutions that we ask the Liberal government to get out of the way and support. But increasingly, Mr. Speaker, people feel endangered in their own communities. I saw this in rural Alberta, where people didn't even lock their doors 10 years ago. Now they worry about burglars breaking in, about thieves siphoning fuel and copper wire on their properties. In big cities, people are terrorized by story after story of increasing crime. And Mr. Speaker, these Liberals love to say that that is just sensationalism and that all the brainy experts will tell you crime is down. I'm sorry, that doesn't work either. Violent crime up 55%, gun crime up 130%, extortion up to 330%, homicides 29%, hate crimes 258%, sexual assault 76%, auto theft up 25%, overdoses up 152% under the catch and release Liberal justice system. All of this happened as a direct result of Liberal laws that turn criminals loose on our streets so that they can offend and re-offend with no consequences. We warned of this when these bills were first passed, but the Liberals went ahead anyway. And every single member of this Liberal caucus that was here before the last election voted for all of these laws, voted to keep them in place, including the new Liberal Justice Minister, whose very appointment is a signal that this Prime Minister is not serious about reversing the damage his party has done. The fact that he would name Justin Trudeau's worst minister to be in charge of crime shows that he is happy to continue with the disastrous criminal justice policies that got us into this mess. This minister was in charge of immigration when population growth went up 300%. He single-handedly destroyed our immigration system, overcrowding housing, our job market, and our healthcare system. Then they moved him over to housing, where he delivered the most expensive housing costs in Canada's history and in all of the G7. And as a punishment for all of this failure, the Liberal Prime Minister now appoints him to be in charge of crime. So you can imagine the results you will get. And what have they done together ever since? They have they haven't done nothing. They've done worse than nothing. They have obstructed action. Obstructionism by the Liberal Party to keep in place the failed laws that are unleashing chaos on our streets. Conservatives said in the spring, right after the election, let us immediately reverse catch and release Liberal laws and lock up the criminals that the government had been turning free. Instead, the Prime Minister said, let's go on vacation. And what has been the consequence of that decision? Real human costs. In Kelowna, 15 people were arrested 1,300 times in 1 year. That's almost 100 arrests per offender per year. In Penticton, there's one guy named Levi who does so much crime that police told me that when he's out of prison, he raises the crime rate for the entire city. One guy. In Vancouver, 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. How is this possible? well, they're automatically released under Liberal Law C-75, which requires judges to release the offender at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions, and I quote. Here are the stories of the catch and release system. Miles Sanderson stabbed 11 people to death and injured another 18 at the James Smith Cree Nation Reserve and in nearby Weldon, Saskatchewan. This is an offender who had already been arrested for 46 prior offenses, including things like armed robbery and assault. He also had a pattern of domestic abuse before he was released. Matthew McQuarrie was sentenced to life in prison for stabbing Emerson Sprung to death and burying him in a shallow grave in Meaford, Ontario Park on May of 2020. McQuarrie, who had an extensive criminal history dating back to 2001, was in jail in the months leading up to Sprung's murder on separate charges, but was released at the height of COVID. Tyrone Samard killed his sister and attacked several others on Hollow Water First Nation in Manitoba on September 4th, 2025. He'd been charged with violent offenses, including assault with a weapon, sexual assault, sexual interference, and invitation to sexual touching before offenses, all offenses that happened before his release, and from alleged instances going back over 8 years. He was out on bail when he carried out his attack. In March, a suspect in a trio of unprovoked stabbings was found to have been previously released on bail. On August 31st, 25-year-old Daniel Senecal was arrested and charged by Niagara Police after a violent sexual assault on a 3-year-old child who was in her own bed, the place where she should have been safest, Mr. Speaker. He was out on release, even though he had already assaulted a 12-year-old. All of these scumbags should have been in jail. And if conservative laws had been in place, they would have been in jail. Unfortunately, this Prime Minister thought his summer vacation was more important. And even since he has returned, he and his Justice Minister have been obstructing our efforts to lock up these criminals and change the law. Once again, if the Liberals are not prepared to reverse their own mistakes, then get out of the way and let Conservatives make Canadians safe again. We do this not out of hatred for the criminal, but out of love for the victims, out of determination to make our communities safe again. We as Conservatives want to restore a country where hard work pays off with beautiful homes, nutritious food, safe streets, where people are united under a proud flag. We've set 4 main priorities for our return of Parliament: stronger take-home pay, safer streets, secure borders, and a self-reliant nation. We are here to oppose the bad the government does, expose their corrupt behavior, but also propose solutions that will improve the lives of the Canadian people. And we call on the government to stop the obstruction, put aside the partisanship, work with us on the solutions that all Canadians have asked for, and bring about the real change that Canadians are demanding. We will put our country ahead of party as always, because we are Canadians first. We love our country and we want to restore its promise. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome the honourable member from Battle River-Crowfoot back to this place. And he started his speech by talking about the importance of agriculture and the ranching community in Alberta and across the prairies. And to him, I say you have an ally here in me in this government in supporting agriculture. And I'm glad to hear that he will be a champion for agriculture in this House. But I had the opportunity to look through the Conservative platform back from April of 2025. Next to no mention about farmers or ranchers whatsoever. And I was in a debate with the honourable member from Foothills during the election. It was sad to see that there was almost next to nothing in the platform around agriculture, despite the fact that we hear a lot about that from the Conservative Party. Will the member from Battle River-Crowfoot make sure that moving forward, not only will he have more to say about farmers to make sure they're not taken for granted, but I want to ask a question around clean fuel standards. I was in with the Canola Council of Canada this week with the Prime Minister. They believe that the Clean Fuel Standard is an important driver for Western Canadian agriculture, especially at this moment. Why is he against that policy at a time that it really matters for Western Canadian farmers?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the standard he talks about is actually a new carbon tax. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who relied on information supplied by the government itself, it will add 17 cents a litre to the cost of fuel at the pump. 17 cents a litre is exactly the price that Canadians were paying on the previous Liberal carbon tax. And thankfully, Conservatives forced the Liberals to reverse themselves after they had brought in and increased that tax, and after the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, had written about the need to raise that tax. And I said at the time, thank goodness we have a short reprieve, but if the Liberals are re-elected, they will bring in another carbon tax. And sadly, I regret to inform the House that I was right about that. They are bringing in a new carbon tax, which will not only harm consumers, but it will harm farmers, because of course farmers use fuel in order to produce food. We are against all carbon tax. We want to get rid of all carbon taxes for everyone, for real, for good.
Yeah. Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. La députée de Shefford.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Encore et encore. We need a 3 strikes you're out law, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't have to recycle the same group of criminals again and again through the system and cause delays. 3 strikes, no bail, parole, probation, or house arrest, at least 10 years behind bars.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is first off to say thank you for raising the case of Emerson Sprung, somebody from my own riding that was murdered by an individual out on bail. But I know I've been hearing for years now from my local law enforcement in my riding about the need for this bail reform and the fact that we got to keep these repeat violent offenders. I know the Leader of the Opposition has been around the country over the last few years talking to police associations, police chiefs. Could he please expand on what he's hearing from the police, the people that are out day after day keeping our Canadian citizens safe, yet facing these criminals and rearresting every single one of them? Thank you.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
First of all, thank you to that member for his incredible and distinguished service to the Canadian Armed Forces. A very distinguished record. And moving to the other heroes who also wear the uniform, are police officers. They tell me they are exhausted with arresting the same offenders over and over again, and they say that the criminals laugh at them. They say that often criminals now confess to their crimes in the back seat of the car because they don't care if they get convicted, knowing that there will be no penalty whatsoever. And this is the direct result of Liberal laws, C-75, requiring the immediate release of the offender at the earliest opportunity and under the least onerous conditions, and I quote, and C-5, the house arrest law. What I say to those police officers is that we want you to have less return customers. And so we'll bring in 3 strikes you're out to keep these dangerous offenders in the slammers. Lock them up, throw away the key.
Yeah. Questions and comments? Questions and commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No one does it better than the Leader of the Conservative Party. He understands very clearly.
Let's get the applause afterwards.
It's the way we need it in the country.
Order. The Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
God, the win
as
of
I
the
was
day.
saying, when it comes to Conservative Party policy and this leader's approach on crime and safety in the community, the first priority is not Canadians. No. It's raising cash for the Conservative Party. We see numerous emails that go out saying slogans on crime and what the Conservatives are going to do, all in an attempt to raise money. That's what it is, a cash cow for the Conservatives. We have a Prime Minister, a newly elected Prime Minister that is looking at what Canadians are saying and has made a solemn commitment to Canadians to bring in bail reform before the end of the year. My question to the leader of the Conservative Party, will he put aside his cash ambitions and fundraising and make a commitment to Canadians as the Prime Minister has, that he will at the very least allow bail reform legislation to go to committee if it is introduced this year before the end of the year. Will he make that commitment to Canadians today?
Bravo.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, allow me to begin by thanking the member for his kind words at the very beginning. He stated half a sentence that was right, and that proves that that proves that even a broken clock is right twice a day, Mr. Speaker. But for the rest of the day, he gets it wrong. You know, he says that he asked me if I would be prepared to fast-track the passage of bail reform. Where is it? He wants me to fast-track the passage of a law his government hasn't even introduced, Mr. Speaker. Has he totally lost his marbles? Or did he mean to say that he would fast-track the law that Conservatives are bringing forward? 3 strikes, you're out. Let's put partisanship aside. Let's pass that law now so that we can lock up the worst criminals and throw away the key.
Resuming debate.